So I was like, you know what? I'm going to stand up and stretch my legs and like put a little sun on my face. So I stand up, turn around, get a little sun on my face, and I'm just like being as big as possible. And I turn around and there's a deer just 75 yards away from me, just staring at me.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Wild Dispatch. I'm Robin and I'm back with more skills and stories from the wild. We are in a different wild place today. The long journey has happened. We have landed in South Africa. We have about a week of doing some things in urban areas. I'm in a nice area at the moment called Pole Mountain. Very beautiful around here. In a week's time, after some city kind of activities, we'll be heading over either, actually not fully determined yet, but to the Eastern Cape or the Karoo, depending on weather. I'm hoping it's not too spicy hot, but I might try and do a bit of hunting on some family friends' farms. So we'll see. Yesterday, it was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit here. So hoping in a week or two that may have faded down a bit. The hottest is supposed to be over, but we'll be waiting to see if that's actually true. Today, we have an episode with Eric Clem. He is a fantastic bow maker, a woodworker by trade in that sense. So he comes from a great set of skills as well, although it's actually interesting whether he started with the bow making or the woodworking. That's something that you'll have to find out in this story when it unfolds. He's also, like me, an adult onset hunter who lives in Los Angeles. So yeah, it was great to chat with someone who has a similar perspective in some ways to the world of outdoor adventures, hunting, adventuring, and really trying to learn the hard grind that comes from not having too many family members or friends growing up who can show you the ways. We're going to jump into that episode any second now. But first, if you are new to the podcast, welcome. It would be amazing if you can give us a quick subscribe or follow. That way you'll always be up to date with great conversations like the one today with Eric. If you are a returning guest, then welcome back. If you could do us a favor and leave a 5-star review. As always, I say it many times, but it really helps with the algorithms, and it means that our podcast will get pushed up and more people will find it. And then I get to have more great conversations with people like Eric. I'm going to have some more interesting conversations with folks over here as well, so excited for all that to happen. Waffle. Let's get on with the podcast. Here's Eric. Okay, there we go.
You know what? I'm sorry, I didn't ask you this, but I have, living in New York for so long, I have kind of a bad habit of swearing. Is this a swear-free podcast?
No, you can let it rip, man. I think swearing is like a valuable asset. I don't know why, but I have a bit of a funny feeling about people who are like really against swearing. I probably should. This is how to end a podcast immediately. Listeners just like gone.
I kind of agree with you. I feel like it's such a release and people need a release that if you're not swearing, you're getting it out somewhere else. Like, I don't know if you're going home and drowning cats or something, but yeah, just get it out where it's victimless crime.
Yeah, right. And it's also like, it's just a tool. It's part of the language, right?
Culturally, we're a little more puritanical than I think you guys had a lot more time to figure it out.
That is also true.
Odie, leave it.
We got some action going on.
Yeah.
Who's that making a noise there?
That's Otis. Otis, you want to say hi? This is my dude. He just got a haircut.
Oh, nice. Hi, Otis.
And he's very confused right now. He's like, what am I doing? Here, go lay down.
Why are you talking to the wall?
Yeah.
So, welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, thank you. Now we're starting. Great.
Okay. Oh, you think? No, we started a while ago. I'm going to just adjust these levels actually, because I turned you up. You were quiet before, and now you're loud. So I think
Oh, okay.
maybe the mic is coming from your
I
mic.
think it's coming from my.
Is it? It's no. It's just the same. No, it's good. I can tell that you've been an actor. So we didn't actually meet, unfortunately, despite my attempts. When I was down in LA, I was being the perfect husband, at least trying to be, and supporting my wife at some
Mhm.
woodworking shows. And I happened to have this wonderful moment when two worlds collide. Obviously, the sort of design world, which comes from me being a good husband, but also hunting and archery. So I had no expectation walking through a wood shop to see a wonderful array of bows. Yeah. So at that moment, I was like, "Whoa, okay, hang on. This is just got way more interesting than I thought it was ever going to get."
I'm glad I reached one person, by the way. I am kind of the odd man out in that shop where everyone is, designing and making furniture for, for designers and whatnot. And I was the only one at that show that was like, hey, you know what? I don't think anyone's really going to take anything from what I've got. So that's why I just didn't really make much of a presentation, and I pieced out during the. I mean, there's two reasons I pieced out during the show, but yeah, that was one of them.
Well, they are things of beauty, man. I've got to say, like,
Thank you.
you got my attention. Stunning. Clearly, a lot of craft goes into those things. Yeah, I mean, like, we're going to talk all about those bows in a second. I guess one thing that I was going to ask you about though is deer season just opened up.
Yeah.
Did you manage to take those bows out, or what season is it now?
So it's archery season currently in where I have tags.
Okay.
I wasn't able to get out for archery season this year, which is a bummer. I've been so busy, I'm way out of practice, and I usually will like practice my ass off right before archery season to make sure I feel like I'm comfortable taking, you know, ethical shots. And I was so busy. And on top of that, me being so out of practice, I just didn't really make an effort to go out this year, which is a bummer. But I do have late season tags. So my second, draw tag is a late season either sex tag. That goes
Okay.
till December, and that's usually when I do my bow hunting. I like to sort of be doing it while no one else is.
Okay. I guess it's
Yeah.
not too cold there, so you're not going to be suffering too badly,
No,
given that you're
never
down
good.
in LA.
Yeah. Last year, opening day for rifle deer season, like my hunting buddy and I were sitting on a hill and it was 100 degrees. It's,
Oh, yeah.
it's very hot.
That's brutal. It's
Yeah.
kind of happens a little bit like that here as well. We have like an A zone tag, which is like the first to open for archery, I think, and it's in like July or something, right?
Yeah.
It's just killer.
So early.
And if you go on the coast, it's not too bad, but there's not many bucks around here at that time of year. So if you got to go inland, and then it's not 100, but it's not far from 100, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's nicer up there though. A friend of mine has tags in A Zone because he has access to Vandenberg Air Force Base. And so he took me up there and it was delightful. Lots of like shady tree cover, lots of rolling hills that are actually navigable. It's awesome.
Okay. So I want to talk to you about making bows and all that stuff, but I wonder if jumping into a little bit of your background, first of all, might be a good thing to do. So this is me literally thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up? Like, you didn't grow up in this area, right? That you're in.
No, no. So I actually grew up in part in Louisiana because that's where my mom's family's from, and then in Houston. Most of my upbringing was in like sort of the suburbs of Houston. And then I left Houston for college. I went to college in New York, and I stayed in New York for like 16 years. And
Wow.
then, yeah, the reason I came to LA is because my wife is in the entertainment industry. And so she needed to be out here. And so I followed her. We
Okay.
met because I also was in the entertainment industry in another life back in the day. But that is no more for me
No.
for the most part.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So Where do I go? I
Oh,
think you just offered me several rabbit holes and I got to choose which one. I'm curious. There aren't many people. Actually, I guess there's one famous person I can think of, whose name I forget now, who are in the world of acting and woodworking.
Nick Offerman. That's who you're
Yeah,
thinking of.
exactly. Nick
Yeah,
Offerman.
very famously so. I actually worked in I was his employee for a couple of years when I first moved out here
Okay. Is that
in
how
his
you
wood
kind of
shop.
got in his radar as well? If you were kind of in the same, I guess I don't know if it's the same circles, but like you got
We
shared
had
world.
We had two mutual friends. One is a person who actually worked in his wood shop that I knew from New York. He was another just sort of struggling actor, and he was a carpenter at the public theater, and we both worked there in New York. And so I knew him, and then actually weirdly, a person that I had done a play with for a really long time. She was friends with him because she was on Parks and Rec with him.
Ah,
Yeah. So
okay.
I had, it was like straight up nepotism. I had a couple of people vouching for me, but it was actually a really great way to sort of meet people in the woodworking world in LA when I first got here. There's such a community here, which is so awesome. When I was in New York, I knew nobody. I was just
Really?
a solo dude working in a group shop where I never saw anybody. You rarely ever meet woodworkers in New York. I guess the same sort of happens in LA, but yeah, the community is very
If you have
close
the
knit
way
here.
in. Yeah, okay, that's good to know. So, were you always making stuff from like a young age? Like, what were you kind of like a
Yeah.
maker? Like, what was it like growing up? Like, you said that where you were, was it like you said suburbia, but did you do outdoorsy stuff as well? Like, what was your kind of
Yeah.
life like then?
My dad used to take me camping a lot when I was a kid. And that was sort of the extent of my outdoor stuff, other than just like going out with my friends and tinkering around in the woods for no good reason. But yeah, my dad was like a very practical woodworker. He wasn't making anything for like beauty or design.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
just very much like we need a bookshelf, so I'm going to make a very simple bookshelf out of plywood, and it's going to involve screws. And if I want it to look semi nice, I'm going to put like a dark stain on it. And that was the extent. But he taught me a lot growing up. I learned the basics from him, even though it was very like don't touch my tools kind of situation. These will hurt you. But yeah, that's pretty much where I started the craft of woodworking. And then I continued it in college. I went to a theater directing program where we did a lot of design and we would work on other people's projects. And so I spent a lot of time as a carpenter, like building sets for people, for
Okay.
my friends, my fellow directors. And so that's how I kind of continued it. And then it just sort of like spiraled from there. Like the way I actually got into making bows and woodworking, I started making bows first, but I got really into archery when I was in New York, which is not an easy hobby to
Yeah, I
pursue
can
in New York.
imagine.
There's not a whole lot of places to shoot, but there was this really great place in Queens called Proline Archery. I actually have no idea if it's still there. I hope they survived COVID,
Mm.
but it's where all like the old timers went. And there was sort of like a new, hip, younger archery range that opened up in Brooklyn somewhere, and it was really fun, and I really liked them a lot. But I kept going to this place in Queens, and it was like an hour and a half commute to get out
Oh
there.
man.
Me with like a giant like bow case on the subway. So yeah, I got really into archery. I did it all the time, and then a friend of mine worked for this sort of furniture design studio. And they had this really cool thing going on where, sort of after hours at their furniture studio, they would turn it into an underground archery tournament.
Oh,
And
nice.
so, if you were sort of like friends of the studio, or if you were an employee or something, you could bring in two of your friends and have a team. And so you would compete against other teams, and there would be like beers and like they had like this massive like charcuterie thing. But yeah, so my friend, she brought me onto the team because she knew I loved archery and I could sort of be a little bit of what's the word, a ringer.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
So
because no one there is like super serious about it. And so
So it was like a community of friends who were just messing around plinking with bows versus like archers who were like coming for a competition. Was that the kind of vibe? It was like
exactly.
social, fun party, let's shoot some
Yes.
arrows.
Exactly. It was a really, really good time and highly illegal.
Yeah,
Um,
I can imagine.
uh, and so, yeah, and they would do these, they had these end of the year, they called it, I can't remember what they called it, called like the weenie roast or something. But the end of the year, like championship tournament upstate, and they would just go all out. They would spend so much money. This studio had, they were very well off. They had a lot of money. They sold tables for like, $20,000, that kind of situation. They're really beautiful. They made awesome stuff. I say made, they're still around.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so they had a rule in their archery tournament, and their bows sucked, by the way.
Oh,
I'm
why
sure
did
they
they
wouldn't
suck?
mind me saying that. They kind of churned them out.
Okay.
It was like sort of make a bow by numbers, and they were out of solid pieces of wood. But it was like from the lumberyard kind of wood. And not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but they'd choose pretty straight grain stuff, but they weren't really like tillering them. And so the
Hmm.
bows didn't really, the limbs didn't bend evenly, and they would shoot all wackadoo. But the other thing is like, you never knew which bow you were picking up. And as any archer knows, you have to like build a relationship with your bow so you know how it shoots, so it's predictable and consistent. And so they had a rule where if you wanted to use your own bow, like bring in your own bow, you had to have made it yourself. And so
Okay.
I was like, yeah, why not? And so I bought the first three volumes of the traditional Bowyer's Bible, and I read each one cover to cover. And the first bow I made it was a laminate bow. I think it was I bought a stick of, I think it was Osage orange. I backed it with hickory, and I can't remember what the handle was made of. So yeah, I made a bow for our team, and we just
Okay.
started cleaning up. And then I actually also I started making arrows for our team as well. And again, as archers will know, the arrow is as, if not more important than the bow itself. And so I was bringing in all these very straight arrows that were spined for the bow that we were using. And we
Yeah.
just started demolishing in the tournament. They actually changed the rule where you couldn't bring in your own arrows because it was too much. And I think people were complaining.
So it was for fun, but it was still there was some element of seriousness. It must be.
Yeah, I mean, insofar as you could get serious in that situation, ultimately we're just hanging out and drinking
Yeah,
beers.
yeah,
But like,
yeah.
it was fun to game the system a little bit. But I loved making the bow. I was like, oh my God, like what a great version of woodworking where it's lovely to sit at a table or sit in a chair, but like to have a piece that you've made that actually does work for you.
Okay.
You're making a very efficient machine. And so, yeah, I
Okay.
just kept doing it.
Interesting. I never really thought about it that way. So you mean you kind of like look at it in a different way compared to like conventional furniture, which in a way it does work for you, right? Like you're sitting on it or you're using it as a surface to place
For
objects.
sure.
But it's, I
Yeah.
guess, less
It's
kinetic.
so,
It's a bit more passive.
yeah, you're asking the wood to continue to store and release energy, and to a
Yeah.
certain extent, I guess a chair is doing the same thing. Like when you sit on it, it's holding you up. So it is storing energy, but it's a machine,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
you're putting work into it, and it is releasing that energy from your work, and it's doing it in as efficient a way as it possibly can. So it's this piece of woodworking that's really doing something. It
Yeah.
feels nice. It's one of those things where I really fell in love with it after the first bow. So I kept doing it as a hobby, and then the hobby is very expensive, and I outgrew my balcony in Brooklyn where I was making these bows.
What
My
floor were you
neighbors were
on?
also.
Did you
I
have
was on
people,
the I was on the fifth floor.
were people looking down on you as you were doing it?
No, because I was on the top floor of my Brooklyn apartment. So what I was doing is I was clamping my pieces to the railing of my balcony to do
Okay.
work on them. Like that was my workbench. But all my shavings would just fly onto other people's balconies below me, and they were very unhappy with me.
Yeah, did they
Um,
complain?
I got a couple of very nice complaints. Very nice for New York.
Okay.
Yeah, so I then started renting a wood shop, like a shared space, kind of like the one that we run in LA, but a little more low key in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And, the hobby and the wood shop were very expensive in terms of, as far as like a hobby goes, it was a very expensive hobby to be making bows. And so I started casually selling them on eBay. Like the old bows, like, you know, if I made like 5 bows, I'd sell the first one I made and then I'd make another bow and sell the next one in the line. And I
How
definitely
much?
sold them
How
for
much were you selling them for?
like a handshake. Some of it's, I look back on it and I think about, I think the first bow I sold was a self bow. It was a solid stave Pacific U. It was a long bow
Yeah.
and it was beautiful. And I had wrapped the handle and leather and like fitted it. And it shot so well. And I think it was like a 50 or 60 pound bow. And I want to say I sold that for like $150 on
Oh,
eBay.
oh no.
You know, but it also makes me happy because I actually had people reach out to me like a few years later and be like, "Hey, I'm still shooting your bows. I really love them. Thank you so much." And it just
Oh, that's
makes me happy
great.
that someone's got it and using it, and hopefully it hasn't broken yet.
Yeah. So what was the moment? Was there like a tipping point where you felt like this is kind of a business. This is something that I can actually do. And at the time, you were also working as an actor? That's what was
Yeah,
happening simultaneously?
yeah. So that's it. Was kind of the beauty of it was that as an actor, you know, you rehearse. I was a theater actor,
Okay.
so you would rehearse during the days usually, which would be like maybe 3 to 4 weeks. And then you would do a show for like an extended period of time, and the shows all happen at night. So I had all my daytimes free. And so I'd spend a lot of my time in the wood shop. And so it was one of those things where it's like, um, I just, it was a culmination of a lot of things, but like I was getting pretty unhappy with the business because any actor who's been doing it long enough will tell you that it's kind of a fucked up thing to do to yourself.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding, but really punishing.
In
And
what way?
it's just the constant, it's like you're constantly getting a job and then you're constantly being fired from that job and then you're constantly looking for another job. It's like you're constantly looking for work,
Yeah.
and in looking for work, you know, the pool of people is ginormous. Your chances of booking something are, you know, depending on where you're at in your career, like oftentimes not great. And it's usually like luck or who you know, and a lot of people like to think their work speaks for them, but really there's so many other things at play. I mean, like any business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I was just really unhappy with that. I loved doing it. I just hated the business side of it. And I found that I was spending more and more of my time thinking about bow building and woodworking. And at a certain point, I had also started, because I had access to a wood shop, I was like, oh, I'm going to teach myself how to woodwork, like proper woodworking. And so I just read a lot, watched a lot of videos online, and started making projects. And then I started selling those as well. And then I met my wife, or who turned out to be my wife somewhere
Yeah.
along the way. We This is an interesting bit of information. I met her because I was doing a show with her boyfriend.
Ah.
And so we met, we were friends for a long time. They broke up, and then we started dating. And then the show that we were doing together got picked back up again. So we were like, her ex and I were, and we, you know, we're still friendly. We were thrown back into a show together, but it was hilarious because it was like, you know, this guy's girlfriend is now my girlfriend, and everyone was like, "Oh, wow, a lot has changed since we last did the show." So yeah,
How did you feel when you found out that the show was going to get picked up again? Like it was going to go back and you suddenly realized, okay, we're going to have to work together now.
yeah, it was it was a little bit of gymnastics for me to figure out how to make that work, but he was super chill about it. And they had also, at this point, they'd been broken up for like a year or so.
Okay.
So it wasn't like it was super fresh. But yeah, it worked out. Listen, we're married now, so uh, I
Exactly.
don't think anyone could really file a complaint about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So eventually she needed to move to LA. and we did long distance for a really long time, which was awful. I don't know if have you guys ever done long distance? I know you're from two different places, but
My wife was in South Africa for only about 4 months.
okay.
But so we
Okay.
did it a little bit. And I don't know if we were technically together at that point, but I guess we pretty much were. So yeah, it's hard, right? It's not easy.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the worst. And so when we were sort of on again, off again, we did it for like 5 years on again, off again. Like we were super in love, but it just like wasn't working out because I did not want to move to LA. I was like diehard New Yorker.
Why is it that you
And
didn't want to
then
go to LA? Is it more about LA or more about your love of New York?
a little bit of both. A little bit of both. That's a whole other conversation. My thoughts on LA. I love it and hate it at the same time. I think a lot of people in LA feel that way.
I wonder, is there a difference between theater, like New York theater, and then LA Hollywood kind of, is that two worlds
It's
that
like
kind of,
two totally different things. And that's actually one of the biggest factors in why I decided to focus wholeheartedly in woodworking and give up acting is because I I decided at a certain point I was gonna, like give it a honest try and move to LA for Jess. And I thought about it and I was like, I don't think that I can be sort of like a film and TV person. I don't think I can. Like, you're also starting from zero at that point. Nobody cares about your New York theater credits when you
okay.
are auditioning for like, a television show. And so I was just like, I don't have it in me. I'm too old. I'm too tired. And I was like, listen, if I move out there, I'm going to give up acting and just like focus entirely on woodworking. And I did. And it was one of the better decisions I've ever made. Moving out here, I mean, I great decision. I eventually got married. I have a pretty successful woodworking business in LA wood shop. And I'm doing a lot more of what I love now. And sort of like kind of to sum up my thoughts on LA versus New York. And it's
Okay.
not fair to compare the two. New York is a far superior city to LA, but it is about 400% easier to live in LA than it is in New York. Like every day doesn't feel like so much of a struggle. And I am super addicted to the ease of living out here. I don't think I could ever move back to New York at this point.
I'm surprised you say that because I would imagine with all the public transport available in New York, off the top of my head, I would have imagined that it's actually more convenient to travel around. You don't need a car. And LA, you've got all the traffic, having lived there for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's actually more easy if you know the rhythms.
Yeah, and it's like the traffic doesn't kill me, and I do miss the public transportation, but it's also as a person who wants to be alone and not surrounded by people, it's just your anxiety levels are so much lower here. Like my time that I spend in my car alone is necessary for me to just sort of be able to recharge.
Yeah.
Whereas in New York, the minute you walk out your door, and you don't realize it living there because you're so used to it, but your body just goes into the survival mode. And, it's not to say that you can't be at ease in New York, but getting onto a crowded subway car in the morning and vying for this tiny little bit of real estate, on that subway car every morning, it really takes its toll on you. And I also think that in a place like New York that is so crowded, and to a certain extent it happens in LA as well, you really start to view your fellow human being as sort of competition for that space. Get on
Yeah.
the subway car, trying to get around people on the sidewalk on your way to work, like trying to get like a seat at a movie theater on
Yeah.
a Friday night. It all starts to wear on you. Um,
So did
so
you
yeah.
did you find that it was like pulling you being in that super focused urban environment? I know you then moved to LA, but did you at any times feel that it was like pulling you out into nature? I mean, there is like quite a lot of wilderness relatively close to New York.
Yeah, absolutely.
So did you
Yeah.
head out? Like, I wonder also, when did you start hunting? Because you were kind of a late onset hunter or an
Oh
adult
yeah.
onset hunter, same as myself. So I'm like
Yeah.
curious about that. Was that when you were in LA? Because Or was it in New
Yeah,
York
so
that you
I
started?
started hunting in LA. I definitely started wanting to do it when I was in New York because I would regularly, I was shooting a bow and I was around people at the archery range who did a lot of hunting. Like there was a giant deer skull on the wall in the archery range. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm just
That's it.
burping out my morning coffee. But yeah, I thought about it a lot. And it was something that I really wanted to get into. And I did a lot of camping in New York. I became addicted to it, like, because I constantly needed to get out of the city and I didn't have a car. And so I would take two trains to get out to Harriman State Park on the New Jersey side. And I would sort of do like little backpacking trips. I'd hike in, I think it was like a 2.5 hour hike. And there was this little lake in Harriman State Park that I would essentially have to myself. And I could go and like spend 3 days there and just not see another human being other than, the person I came in with. So I did spend a lot of time camping and outdoors when I was in New York because I just sort of needed it. But the hunting aspect of it, I started thinking about it because as kind of not to sound like woo woo about it or like, I just like as a conscientious eater,
Uh-huh.
as someone who like, I feel like I need to eat meat to sort of feel okay.
Mm-hmm.
I started feeling guilty about it. And I was like, I had sort of grown up, which is funny. Growing up in Texas, you would think it's the opposite. I'd grown up thinking that like hunting was for like, gun toting crazies and like people who just wanted to murder animals. And then, because I hadn't really spent much time thinking about it because it wasn't something that my family did. But then I started thinking about like the most ethical way to source meat because I felt so bad about sort of factory farming and all that. I was like, I guess hunting is it. And so I started researching it and reading about it. And it was something I was like, oh, this is totally the opposite of what I thought it was. It actually is about like love for the animals and kind of the earth. But it's impossible to get into hunting in New York. I just didn't know where to begin.
Yeah.
And so I had no one to show me. There were other people at the archery range who also talked about it. Like there's these two guys that I'd always shoot with, and they're like, we really want to get into hunting. We have no idea how. And I was like, yeah, same. So it wasn't until I moved out to LA, one of my shop mates, this guy, Nat Hill, who is an incredible woodworker. He's like the go-to guy in Southern California for like shaker furniture, which is such a like a niche,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he's really good at it. And he grew up in the Northeast and he'd been hunting most of his adult life. And he was like, I'm looking for a hunting buddy. You want to come out with me? And so, yeah, he's the one that showed me the ropes. And he was coming from the Northeast. And so it's a very different kind of hunting than Western hunting. And so he was showing me essentially how to hunt, but also learning himself how to do it in the West.
Yeah.
So it was a very like we were both sort of learning together. It was really nice.
Was there any moments where you were both together that it was like, oh, okay, so this is different than I thought? Or was he doing mostly tree stand hunting, or what was the kind of hunting he was doing?
I think he was doing some still hunting, but a lot of tree
Okay.
stand hunting.
Yeah.
And he had done his research about Western hunting and was like, I'm pretty sure we just need to find a high spot and glass and find something and then move in on it. And so we just started looking for locations in LA. We were doing, e-scouting. And then we quickly realized that because we both wanted to hunt Angeles Forest because it's essentially in our backyards. And I still really take pride in hunting Angeles Forest. I really love it. I
Yeah.
love that I can drive for 30 minutes and be in a relatively decent hunting spot, decent for Angeles Forest. It's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
none of it is great. No one would ever go out of their way to come here to hunt.
You're just saying that to keep people away.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's terrible. Poison ivy everywhere and trolls. Um, but yeah, we did a lot of scouting. We went to a bunch of different locations and realized that like almost none of it was navigable. Like the hills on Google Earth was not at all representative of what it actually was. It was just a lot of stuff that we couldn't get around. And then we eventually found a few places, and now we've got a couple under our belt that we frequent.
Okay, you got your zones.
Yeah.
It's hard though. It is hard, that point, isn't it? Like when you're just trying to figure out. I remember when I started, it's the same situation. You don't know people, and you feels like you're just taking weapons for a walk, and you don't know if you're in the right area.
Yeah.
You're
That's
not
what Nat
hunting,
calls it. He's like, let's go on a hike with a gun. Yeah.
right? You're just taking a walk, and I mean, I remember I spent like 30 days the first deer season, and I don't think I saw a deer until like day 28 or something like that.
Dude, seriously, it was the same for us. Like, if we saw a deer, it was just like an exhilarating moment. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe we saw a deer today. It's crazy. Like, the idea of actually harvesting one was so foreign to us for so long. We hunted for 3 years before we took our first deer,
Yeah.
and that was almost by accident. I guess a lot of it happens almost by accident, but yeah.
What happened? Tell that story.
We were just in one of our places that we thought, hey, this looks, there's a lot of sign. We had scouted it and we're like, this is a really good vantage. We actually still go to this spot. And we had hunted there. I think we found the spot the first year. And so this was our third year hunting it. And we also, we kept, this is not a great way to be. We'd go in with the mindset of like, all right, go in, give it another try. Probably not going to come out with a deer. And we were, hanging out that morning, and I was getting really cold because it's, of course, really cold in the mornings and really hot in the afternoons.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we had the sun at our backs, and the sun was just starting to come up over the mountain. And I could see some of the shadows of the bushes in front of me. And so I was like, and Nat had gone up and around somewhere. He's like, I'm going to check the other side of the hill. So I was like, great. And it was probably, like 9:30 in the morning, something like that. So it was getting like relatively late in the morning for deer moving around. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to stand up and stretch my legs and like put a little sun on my face. So I stand up, turn around, get a little sun on my face, and I'm just like being as big as possible. And I turn around, and there's a deer just 75 yards away from me, just staring at me. And I was like, oh my God. And it was a doe, and I was like, great. I get to just like, this is so crazy. I get to watch this doe, and she's just staring at me. And then right behind her comes another deer out from a bush, and it's a buck who's following her. Relatively like small bodied buck, but he also looks at me. And we're all just staring at each other. And my rifle is like on the ground and probably like a good like 3 feet away from me, because I'd done a little bit of like stretch walking. And I was like, okay, this is the best opportunity I've ever had. And by chance, I've blown it. I guess this is like the way it goes. And I was like, I guess I'm just going to watch these deer. And so I just sat very still, and they just sat there and they stared at me. And I was like, what is going on here? And so after about like, it felt like forever, but it was probably like 15 seconds or so. I was like, I guess I'm going to just reach down and see if I can grab my rifle. And so like I really slowly went down, got my rifle. And as I'm coming back up, it spooked the doe, and she ran. And the buck was still looking at me. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he's still here. But he eventually followed the doe, and they went, as anyone who knows Angeles Forest, it's like, a deer can walk 10 feet and be gone to you forever.
Yeah.
And so they went down in sort of like a little gully behind some bushes. And I was like, holy crap, I can't believe that just happened. And then they popped up about 115 yards away, maybe like a minute later. I still had my rifle in my hand, and I was freaking out and shaking. And, the buck was presenting a very good shot. And at this point, I was standing, and I didn't realize it, but Nat had walked back to the spot, and he saw me standing with my rifle. I must have been like, and I eventually calmed myself down and had enough time and opportunity to sit myself down on my butt and prop myself up on my knee.
Yeah.
And get, I want to say stable, but definitely more stable than I was. But, looking through my scope, it was probably like this.
Yeah.
I was so nervous. Yeah. And I took the shot, hit it right in the vitals, and I think it took a step and a half and then dropped. And it was like 115 yards away. And one of the things that I took away from that was how hard it was to find that deer, knowing exactly where it dropped I could point to it from where we were at. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't see it, but I saw it drop down into the bushes. And it took us like a considerable amount of time to find that. But yeah, that was my first. And it was like, I think I was amped up for like 2 days afterward.
I can imagine. What
Yeah.
was it like then? I mean, what time of year was it at that point, and what were the temperatures like? Was it a stress then? I mean, if you're new, like there's loads of stuff, right? You're saying refinding that animal, and that's already like now you got to learn how to track and how to like
Yes.
relocate things. But then you had the stress, I guess, of am I gonna like damage this meat or like by leaving it too long? Like, was that
Yeah.
going through your mind?
And there was also a part of me that was like, what if he dropped and then got back up and then ran away? And I'm just never going to find him. But, you know, it's so dense down there. Yeah, it was probably like, it was late in our season. So I would imagine it was like late October when this happened, but it was still very hot.
Okay.
I've got pictures of us like taking the deer back in just like short sleeve shirts and just sweating our asses off. And yeah, it was very nerve wracking. It was once Nat eventually found the deer and walking up on it was it was very striking. Walking up to, you know, we'd spent so much time watching the deer, not specifically this deer, but just deer in general. And, you know, you grow a relationship to these animals and you really grow an affection for them. And it was sort of heartbreaking to walk up on an animal that you had killed. And so, and Nat had done this a million times. It's like, it's old hat for him. And his best advice was like when we were skinning it and breaking it down, he was like, listen, it's already dead. You can't hurt it. But you know, it's hard to get that through your head. And I will say this, I've only taken 3 deer in like the 8 years that I've been hunting. And each one has been a little bit heartbreaking. Like truth be told, I've cried each time I've shot a deer. I'm a little bit of a softie when it comes to it. I definitely try to hide it from my hunting buddy. I just like just quietly, just like shed a few tears while I'm skinning the animal. But it's always the first like moment of walking up on it that really is, it's very impactful.
Yeah, like the gravity of the consequences of your actions.
Absolutely. And knowing full well that it's for the best and this is going to feed me and my friends and family for quite some time. You know, I don't regret it at all, but it is really, it's one of those things where I know that it will get easier and easier as time goes on, but it's also one of those things that it's like, I don't know if I want it to.
Yeah. You don't want it to get too easy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, right? Like it's inevitable with anything that you do. It becomes more normalized. Your brain just accepts it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tricky. So I'm wondering if you're in a community in LA and you're an actor, or maybe you've hung up your hat as an actor at this point, but your partner is also an actor.
All my friends are writers.
All your friends are
actors.
Yeah. So you just had this moment that you've been working towards for like probably years at this point. Who can you tell? Like, how did you share the news with people? Did you talk about it? Like, how does that go down with that community of people?
I did. I also like my very close knit community of people they know why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
You know, so it didn't feel weird telling like my very close friends that I had finally done it. I think, you know, I don't know exactly the way they felt about it, but they've all shared in the bounty, that's for sure. Because I love cooking for the people I love. But yeah, it's one of those things where I don't have a whole lot of people I can talk hunting to, but I do have no problem telling people when I've been successful. And I don't engage with Instagram too much, but I do feel like there was a time when that was a platform that I used to sort of share information with friends. It's not so much anymore. I think I've just sort of grown out of it. And I never was like posting all the time kind of situation. But I remember posting about that because I was it was such a proud moment because it was something we had worked for so long. And it was one of those things where and I didn't like post pictures of like, I didn't do the regular like standing next to the animal with a bullet hole in it with a thumbs up kind of situation. It was just sort of like, I think I posted a picture of all the meat in my freezer,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's ultimately, other than, loving the actual act of like being outdoors and hunting, that's what it was all about. And I still felt weird about it. My very broad community of people are probably like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Right. It's
There's a dude.
interesting.
This is very tangential, but like, there's a dude in New York now, and I don't know the guy, but he went to acting school with a friend of mine, but he is now a guide in the tri-state area, and I think he has an Instagram account. I don't know if he still has it, but it was called like the Hunting Actor, and he just takes people like me who are interested in hunting but have no idea how to get into it, sort of like in New York City, out, I think either upstate New York or in New Jersey. I actually don't know where he goes. And he takes people out hunting for the first time. And I
Yeah.
think that is like, there needs to be more of that. There needs to be more people in especially major metropolitan areas engaging in the hunting community. Because there are a lot of people, I think, especially more and more now, who are want to get into it for, you know,
Yeah.
ethical reasons,
Right.
who just don't have any idea how to get into it. And I love that this dude, and I hope more and more people start doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. I mean, when your community is pretty urban, yeah, how are you going to know? How are you going to know people? And there must be a lot of people who are kind of curious but are not able to get out there and do these things. So yeah, it's great that he's yeah, sort of like a bit of a bridge for a lot of people.
Yeah. You must, I mean, you do the podcast, so you now know a billion people in the hunting community. But like, how did you first get started doing this?
Yeah. You mean the podcast or hunting?
Hunting.
So I got into hunting in South Africa, of all places. So
Oh,
actually,
wow.
I mean, I did a little bit of hunting in England, where I'm from originally. But in England, there's a lot more regulations and control, which rightly so, with weapons and things like that. That's
Mhm.
a whole other conversation we could go into.
Oh yeah, I could talk about that for.
I ran around with my air rifle a bunch, and I used to shoot
Mhm.
rabbits and squirrels and pheasants and all kinds of things that I could get within range of and eat
Mhm.
those when I was younger. But big game hunting and the whole idea of like filling your freezer didn't really come about until I was in South Africa visiting my wife's family, and they all hunt. There's a big culture of hunting in South Africa. That's how they get a lot of their meat. So I got invited to go on the family farm. And so actually my first experience of hunting was pretty wild. I just arrived in this area. It's kind of like central South Africa. It's called the Karoo.
Mhm.
And the word was out that I was going to be interested in doing some hunting. And I guess my wife's brother-in-law at the time was maybe 12 years old, I think. Super like farm kid. He's like learnt riding quad bikes at the age of like 3 years old. So he's like, hey, you want to go shoot a springbok? You want to go shoot a springbok? And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Before I know it, I'm like ripping down dirt roads at 50 miles an hour with like an 11 or 12-year-old driving and like driving a truck.
Oh my
Like,
God.
and
With weapons.
with a rifle in my hands that I've never sighted in, I've never shot, and so it's pretty loosey goosey over there at that point. And suddenly he's like slams the brakes on, and he goes, "Yeah, no, they're there. Shoot him. Look out the window, which he has just wound down." And I see like two springbok in the distance, maybe 150 yards away. And I was like clicking the handle to get out of the car, and he was like, no, just shoot from the truck.
We're just here to collect some meat.
So he literally just puts his fingers in his ears while I like rest the rifle on the window or on the top of the door and take a shot. And luckily, I made a good shot. So yeah, and that was the first big game animal that I shot. And again, the similar emotions approaching the animal. And it's funny talking about this now. I haven't talked about it in a long time, but that kind of realizing what you've done, and the kind of, yeah, it's a completely new experience, isn't it? And in a funny way, I think this is also, now we're going to go on another tangent, but I feel hunting in some ways has kind of brought the reality of life and death far more close to me. Like, I'm far more aware of it and far more comfortable with like my own mortality now in some ways. And I think I have a sneaking suspicion, and I'd love your thoughts on this, but I think there are quite a lot of people that get very uncomfortable about the idea of hunting and killing because of that proximity, that it brings the idea of death and mortality closer to people. And it does, I don't know. I mean, I know that there's obviously an act of violence towards another being is another element too. But I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I haven't thought about it in terms of people being against it because it reminds of them of their own mortality. But I think that, I mean, that is to a certain extent that's part of what people's problem is with, you know, killing an animal, is that, you know, they empathize, and they empathize because
Yeah.
they have, you know, feelings or fear of death. And I think a lot of people really focus on the moment of death. And I get that. People are like, oh, it's so awful to, you know, shoot an animal with a rifle or with a bow. And, you know, when really, when I first started getting into it, it wasn't so much about, and I do think it's important, like how the animal's killed is very, very important, which is, it's so important to be ethical about that. But just like what the animal's life was beforehand. And that's sort of when I talk about hunting to people who want to talk about it, regardless of how they feel about it, I like to focus more on the idea that this is an animal that wasn't raised in captivity, raised for the sole purpose of being eaten. This is an animal that had the absolute best life it could have possibly had up until that very last moment. And that very last moment is probably a way more humane way to die than it would have had it died in nature.
Yeah. I think that's something people don't realize as well, right? Because if you don't think about it, it's like nature is savage. Like it's brutal.
You know what really, my wife shot a movie in South Africa, and we went on safari while we were there in Kruger.
Okay.
And that really, and it's one of those things where I think I had, you know, you always know like that nature's brutal and it's like the circle of life kind of thing, but like not until you really see it in abundance there can you wrap your head around it. And I think that changed the way that I thought about kind of how really brutal nature is, and how, like, you know, you can hear Circle of Life, you can watch it on Lion King, but you don't really appreciate how important death is to, you know, to life, to life going on. Like, death is absolutely integral to that. It's necessary for other life to go on. And being in South Africa and seeing that firsthand really drove that home for me in a really big way. It was like life-changing for my wife and I. This was funny because we didn't really want to do it because we both were under the assumption that going on safari was going to be kind of like the Disneyland ride version of a zoo, which is, as you know, it's absolutely not that at all. It's essentially someone being like, hey, we're going to put you in their environment. Good luck. You know, you're going to be safe for the most part, but like, you're just going to be observing them doing their thing in their environment.
Did you see anything specific while you were there? Was there a kill that you saw happen?
Yeah. We saw lions hunting, which was truly amazing. We saw a leopard pulling some sort of antelope into a tree and just devouring it. Yeah, it was just sort of like, I mean, we saw a lot of things feeding, you know, we were constantly driving up on things that had just been killed. And, you know, when you first get there, you're like, oh my God, look at all the antelope. They're so cool. And like, coming from a place where you don't see something like that, your guides are like, yeah, you're going to see a lot of these. But then, you realize that it's like they're living a good life, but they're also essentially there to, not to say it's their purpose, but like nature being what it is, it has made them in such a way that they can supply the other animals with food. They breed fast enough, they're in abundance, and they're doing their thing, but they're also just, it's part of the food chain.
Yeah. The other thing
That
I
was a weird
find,
tangent.
oh, it's good. I like it.
Yeah.
Rabbit holes are good, man. The other thing that really brings home sometimes, I have like a thing on social media, nature is metal, I think it's called. It's like all the footage of nature documentaries that doesn't make it to BBC or
The ones Richard Attenborough are not going to comment on.
yeah, no, exactly. And it's really wild the lack of compassion that animals have. I mean, I can't speak for, I don't know what's going through their mind, but
Sure.
the number of times that they will feed on animals and they don't kill the animal, they're not putting it out of its misery. That's not a thought process. The thought process is, I've got an animal down, I'm going to eat as much of its internal organs that have the most nutrients as quickly as possible before my competitors come in and try and push me off, or there's more people who are going to create competition for that food. Like the feelings or the emotions or the physical pain of the animal is not one bit of concern for the well, I mean, at least you don't see that.
Right.
You can't interview
an animal. It doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be. I mean, I was mushroom hunting yesterday and was making my way back home after finding some chanterelles, and stumbled across a buck that had been just killed. And I think it was like, I don't know if it was a mountain lion or a black bear, but it had been like completely eviscerated. Like it had no back legs. Like it was just there, like bam, done. And there was no sign of anything on its neck or anything. So I can imagine that buck probably was alive whilst its back end was just removed. It's just completely brutal, right? Like,
yeah, you think about that, and then you think about the way that we dispatch animals, and it's just like we are, I also really, this is, and I approach this as a dog owner and lover. My dog is truly one of the most important things in life. I would burn down cities for my dog. And I think about him, and he's an animal. And of course, not animals are the same. Not all animals are the same. Humans are a prime example of that. But like, I think about how emotional he is, and how something will he's very resilient, but also like something can happen that will really like ruin his day. And that it's ruined his day, and he'll be like broody about things. And I think about, sort of, if, because I've also seen videos of like deer being shot with an arrow and not even knowing, not hearing the shot, not knowing the shot, and they get shot and they're just like,
yeah.
Like sometimes they'll like jump up and they're just like, what the fuck was that? And then, or like actually being hurt and running away. But then when they stop and calm down, there's no sign of, I wonder about this and I struggle with this. And I'm like, is that deer feeling emotions about what just happened? And I know that, like, say it's a good arrow shot and it's bleeding out, it's going to calm down and it's going to lie down and it's going to sort of like quietly pass away. It's not like, like writhing in agony, I think is what most people think happens when you shoot an animal. But I always think about like, is that deer experiencing emotions about what just happened? Or is it just like, this happened, I had a reaction to it, and now I'm just moving on? That's something I still struggle with. In that world, I don't have any qualms about the way that we dispatch animals in sort of like its last moments. But it's just something I wonder about.
Yeah, it's powerful. And I think that's an interesting thing that it seems like we've maybe experienced some similar stuff. Being away from the world of hunting completely, not completely, but like a lot when you're younger, and not having that frame of reference or thinking about these things, and then coming in and then dipping our toes, hunting animals, and then I think the more time I spent in the wilderness seeing the humanity and the emotions and the personality in so many different animals and the way that they, like bears for one thing, like I've spent a lot of time around black bears now, and you can see them bumbling around, thinking, figuring stuff out, like having their own thought processes and emotions. I think it's actually, in a way, it's like the more time you spend in nature, the more difficult it is. Like you see just how similar we are to all the other animals, but it doesn't stop you from doing what you're doing, but it just adds more weight to it. Does that make sense? And I think
no, I could not agree more. It really, it requires you to consider it more. It requires you to think about it and really, it's like weigh what you're doing. What really, like, I agree. Like, you sit there and you study animals, and the more you study them, the more you, I think, I'm just going to pause that thought and say that, like, I think anytime I see animals play, that's truly from the emotional standpoint of harvesting an animal, that I think is what haunts me the most. You know, until you see an animal play, I don't know what it is about that, but for some reason, that is what really makes me empathize with an animal and say, oh, this animal is not like like a goldfish, it's not just going food, water, breathe, poop, it's going oh, I've got some downtime and I'm going to play with my siblings. Yeah, that's, I saw that. I when I was hunting in Vandenberg, there was a bunch of, they use that space as a cattle farm as well. So I spent a lot of time while I was glassing, just kind of watching the cows, like fuck about, and like go to like the watering hole. And it was weirdly way more interesting than I thought it was going to be. But there was a certain point when I saw two calves just playing for like a solid hour. And I was like, oh God, this is going to make going to the grocery store that much harder. And I don't eat a whole lot of red meat anymore because I have, venison in my freezer. But, there are times I'll go out to restaurants and I'll get a burger or something. But we should be thinking about these things.
Yeah.
We should constantly be thinking
about these things. It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. I've got a question for you. I wonder if you're okay with sharing the story. We were talking about life and death and awareness of mortality. You had an experience, I think, before you went to LA, which I wonder if that brought your own mortality or your own vulnerability to the forefront.
Absolutely.
I think you probably know what I'm talking about.
I mean, yeah, there was a couple of events in my life that really did that. But are you talking about my accident?
Yes, I am. But I think there's also another as well, which I think might be also something we could talk about.
I had two things that happened. One was, it's funny because you were saying that and I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? Because I don't think about it. I really don't think about it much anymore. But so I, for anyone who's watching, I chopped my fingers off in the wood shop ages ago at this point.
How many years ago was that?
God, I don't even know.
What year was it?
9? Okay. No, it had to have been at least 9 or 10 years ago. I don't really remember what year it was. That was a weird year. And it was a pure result of me being too cavalier in the wood shop. It wasn't one of those like, oh my God, like everything was going right until it wasn't. I mean, everything was going right until it wasn't, but I was just making careless mistakes. I was doing like, I don't know, I don't want to get too technical with it, but like I was using a thing called a jointer.
Okay.
And there are 3 things there's a number of things you're not supposed to do with a jointer. There were 3 things that I was doing, 2 of which I knew I was doing and was still doing it, but things you're not supposed to do. So I was joining a piece. You're not supposed to joint short pieces. You're also supposed to generally use paddles to hold something down on the jointer.
Yeah.
And I was doing it with my hands with a short piece. I knew you shouldn't do those 2 things, and I was still doing it because it was just like a sort of convenience thing. and I was running the piece across the joiner. And what I didn't realize was that because my piece was also very short, I was also doing something you're not supposed to do, which is run it cross grain. And I sort of made a mistake. I hadn't realized that I was running it cross grain because it was like essentially a square piece. And I just was like not thinking. I did a lot of things in the wood shop back in the day that I wasn't really thinking about. I was very cavalier, very confident. And I'd also never taken a class.
Wow.
I had never had someone tell me. I knew that there were things you weren't supposed to do. I didn't fully understand why you weren't supposed to do certain of those things. And I didn't really have anyone to sort of drive it home for me. And I don't think everyone needs that, but I think I did. And so it's very overly confident cavalier. I was doing these things. Everything went to hell in an instant. And the piece that I was running across, the blade grabbed the cross grain element of it and like sucked it into the machine, and my left hand went down into the joiner, and the tips of all four of these fingers just sort of got like ripped and ground off like in an instant.
Wow. So the machine it's not like a cutting blade. It's like a
No, it's like I don't want to say it's like a blender, but it's like a spinning, like it's like if you think about like a table saw blade being like this, spinning this way.
So like
it's like a long blade that spins this way.
Oh, so it's like, is it just one?
It's like shearing material off. It's the one cylinder with 3 long blades on it that sort of like grind the material off of the bottom side of wood to make it flat. And it made my fingers very flat. So yeah, that was a quite an experience. You know, everyone always asks me like how bad it hurt and if I passed out. And it felt like someone hit my fingers with a hammer, but then the pain totally subsided, like almost immediately. And I didn't pass out. I wish I had passed out later on, but I think I was so angry that kept me from like truly losing it. And I'm not crazy squeamish about the sight of blood or gore, and it is really hilariously gory. If you want, I will send you pictures of it. I always offer this to my students, by the way. So I didn't mention, but I teach woodworking now, and this is such a good teaching tool. But yeah, I have pictures that I always offer to show people. Oh, there's a coyote. I love watching coyotes. Oh, he's just chilling.
We could talk about that in a second. But
it's
sorry,
a real
finish your
problem
story.
more of a problem for my wife than it is for me. What the fuck was I talking about? Oh, yes. So it's a really good teaching tool. But I have these pictures that look, if you saw them and didn't know, you would think that it was like a bad like Hollywood special effects.
Wow.
Because it really is just like, it's me in the hospital. And at a certain point, they had numbed my hand. They hadn't put me on painkillers because they needed to do surgery, but they had numbed the nerves, which was such a relief for me that I was almost giddy. And so I started taking all these pictures, and I've got like pictures of me like with the thumbs up with my fingers like this, and it's just like these like shreds hanging off of it. And like, I think it was my pointer finger had like a tiny shred and then a big chunk of finger and then like nothing after that. It looks unreal. If you saw it, you'd be like, this is stupid. This is not the way the human body works. So yeah, that happened.
Did you?
And it really...
Go on.
No. What were you going to ask?
I was going to say, like, how quickly, when the accident happened, how quickly did your mind go to the potential consequences? Like, how is this going to impact your life going forward? Did you think about it straight away?
Immediately. I looked down and I saw my fingers, and I immediately was like, life has changed now. Life will never be the same. Which is funny looking back on that, because my life is so unchanged. There's 2 things that are different in my life. One is I no longer play the guitar, but I was very bad to begin with. And I think the world is a better place as a result. And the other thing is occasionally, like, I'll reach for a drink across the table, and still to this day, I'll just come up short. But like I immediately thought like, yeah, like my life has totally changed. Like, this is going to suck. And I was so mad. And luckily it was at night, which is when most accidents happen in the wood shop, of course, because you're tired and have been doing something for a really long time and your mind wanders. But we had I guess you'd call him kind of the intern of our sort of shared wood shop. The guy who owned the shop was giving him access to the shop in turn and teaching him in return for like doing shoply duties. And he was there. He was able to call 911 for me, which was really lucky because I was so intent on holding my fingers and keeping the blood from gushing, which I didn't realize because when I got into the ambulance later, the ambulance driver was like, just let go. I was like, it's going to gush blood everywhere. And he's like, no, your veins close up on their own. They constrict. It's like a wonderful thing that the body does. And sure enough, I let go and like there was no blood coming out. So he called 911 for me. And later on, I found out that it was his job because wood shops often have a dust collection system, which will pull wood chips out through these giant pipes and into a dust collector. And it was his job to clean my fingers out of both the machine and the dust collection system.
Oh.
And it was one of those things where I was like, how do I even begin to apologize and thank this person? And, I think at the time I gave him like a really nice bottle of whiskey, but he actually, I'm going on a lot of tangents here. This is like ADD. It's just manifest in a podcast. You are not going to use this podcast. So he called me up maybe like, I don't remember. It was maybe like 2 years later. I think I was in LA. And he was like, hey, I just wanted to call you and thank you. He was like, remember that yoga instructor that you encouraged me to like ask on a date? And like at the time, this dude is, by the way, so fucking handsome. He was one of those people that like, if you saw him on the street, like, I don't care like who you're attracted to in the world. You look at him and be like, that's an objectively beautiful human being.
Yes.
And he was talking about like, and he was such a nice dude. And he was talking about this yoga instructor. He was like, oh, I really vibe with her and I really want to ask her on a date, but like, I don't want to do that. It's inappropriate. And I was like, dude, just like, what do you have to lose?
Exactly.
Just do it. Worst case scenario, like you ruin things and you go to a different yoga studio. You just throw a stick and you'll hit 3 of them in New York. And he was like, all right. So he eventually asked her on a date, but he called me up and he was like, hey, I just wanted you to know that like, I wanted to thank you for encouraging me to go on that date because we're still together and we now have a baby. We have a daughter and
Wow.
She's like the best thing in my life. And I still get like emotional about it. It was one of those things where I was like, great. Maybe that's how like the universe is helping me thank this dude for cleaning my fingers out of the dust collection system in our wood shop. But yeah, the world is weird in that way.
It's also like how we think people perceive things, right? Like I imagine up until that moment, you probably imagined that he's always forever going to think of you as the guy that he had to clean the fingers out of the dust collector.
And to a certain extent, I'm sure he does.
Yes. But also in his mind, you're the guy who introduced him to his wife. So like,
yeah,
or encouraged him to meet his wife. It's funny how we just have different perceptions, don't we?
Yeah. And it really is. It's, yeah.
So I've got a question then about your fingers still. How was the recovery, like physically, mentally? Did it take you time to get over either?
Yeah, it really did. It sucked. It's funny because I always say it after it happened, it didn't hurt for about 20 minutes and then it hurt for like 3 months. So the pain was really intense. And it's funny because after it happened, I think it's a combination of probably like being on painkillers, which weirdly the doctor that I had, who was an amazing doctor, was really hesitant to prescribe me a higher dose of painkillers because he knew that I was probably going to be on them for a while. But I think that plus the emotional stress of it has made it to where I really don't remember much of essentially like the months after that happened. Like they're all kind of a blur to me.
Yeah.
But the emotional aspect of it was the hardest because I was just under the impression that like my life was going to suck after that. And I wish I could go back and be like, it's fine. It's fine. It's not something you'll ever think about. on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, the recovery was long. It was really intense. I eventually got over it, but in terms of being in the wood shop, I had a guy put me in touch with this other dude who had also had an accident. He had a table saw accident, which is more common, and it chopped off like, I think he like all he had left was like sort of like the mitt of his hand. He had no fingers, no thumb. I'm really lucky because I didn't affect my thumb at all. But I talked to him on the phone, and it was one of the most helpful things that I've ever done was talking to him. And he was like, you really need to get yourself back into the wood shop. And it was like, you need to do it. Whether or not you continue woodworking, it's something that's really important. Before your doctor tells you you're allowed to, just get back in there and just do like small tasks, just small little things. And I did that. I think I went back in the wood shop maybe like, I don't know, maybe like 4 weeks later, something like that. Like, once my hand had healed enough that I could start actually like using it a little bit. But getting back in there and sort of like making peace with it, and like sort of making peace with the machine. It was weird. I had a real woo-woo moment with that specific machine. And I continued to use it after that for a long time. But it was so important to my mental recovery, but also from a physical therapy point of view. They tell you to do all these exercises. There are also these like things you're supposed to do. But I think in terms of physical therapy, my recovery was like greatly quickened by the fact that I was doing something that didn't feel like an exercise. I just naturally was doing PT things in the act of woodworking, but like for the sole purpose of, not getting better, but like having a task, building something. And it was, I think that's one of the things I attribute to getting over it in the way that I did.
Did it change your focus or motivate you in anything in your life, like after that experience? Like how long after that did you move to LA, I guess, like
almost
that change?
Like really soon thereafter. I started making moves to do it. Well, because my wife, Jess, she was my girlfriend at the time, and we were, like I said, we were on again, off again, and we were off at the moment when that happened. And she really came through. She like flew to New York immediately afterwards and spent as much time with me as she could. She had to get back for a job, I believe. But it was one of those things where it made me think about the things that are important in my life and things that I need to change up. And to go on a quick tangent, another really big event in my life, my dad suddenly died when I was 29.
Wow.
And that was another moment that it really made me take inventory of what was working and what was not working in my life and why I was doing certain things that I was doing. In both instances, I made big changes, both for the better. I think that had I not chopped my fingers off, I probably would not be married right now to Jess, she's like the best thing that's ever happened to me. And so, yeah, it really, not only did it make me a better woodworker because I'm way more careful now, but yeah, it really lit a fire under my ass to just say like, you know what? Like life is short. We're very fragile. I often think about, do you ever read Catch-22?
I actually did, yeah, but I don't remember it because I also have a very bad memory, like ADHD as well.
Yeah.
I remember the show more actually. I watched
Yeah, the
that.
show's great. I actually really enjoyed it. But there's like this, he always talks about, I can't remember the name of the character, but it's like this guy's secret. And he's always talking about this guy's secret. And it's constantly cutting back to this guy who had been shot in the plane. And at the end of the book, you find out the guy's secret is that like, we're just very fragile. We're not as strong as we think we are. We're not permanent by any means. The human body is just like a sack of very fragile things.
Yeah.
And mentally, we're very fragile. And that is something that I thought about a lot after the accident. And I was just like, man, I'm just this like sack of blood and bones walking around in a world that things are moving 80 miles per hour all the time. I've got nothing to lose. And so it was just like, just get over yourself and move to LA and try it. Worst case scenario, you move back. And yeah, so that was one of the big impetus for me moving out. And so
Can I ask
things
what?
are better now.
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, like you've set up a wood shop and you got a whole thing going on.
Yeah.
What you said that the other big point in your life was when your dad suddenly died. What was how did that reframe your mind? Because you said that that also had a huge effect or a huge like zoom focus on what was important.
Yeah, it was one of those moments where I was really struggling in New York. As an actor, as most actors in New York are struggling.
Mm.
And I had been working at I was working as like a sort of a legal assistant paralegal at this law firm for about 3 years as kind of my survival job. All actors have a survival job. Because like I said, you're constantly getting and losing jobs because that's just the nature of it. And I was pretty miserable. And I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like the job itself. I didn't like the work itself. Weirdly enough, not weirdly enough, I really like the people that I worked with at the law firm.
Okay.
It's a very small law firm. I really love the two owners, the two partners and the other people that I worked with. But I was just like, I spent, 8 hours a day doing something that I just didn't care about. All the while, because I had that job, I was missing opportunities in the sort of arts and theater world. And when my dad passed away, I had this moment that I was like, I did a lot of soul searching and I was like, why am I doing this? Like, I know I need to pay rent and I need to eat. So I have this job. But I think I partly realized because of who my dad was. My dad was a very responsible human being. He was very type A, very like horse blinders, focused on what he considered to be very important things. One of them is like security, but that's not really the name of the game for an actor. And so I thought about it and I was like, I think that I have this job to make my dad happy because I think it's what I'm supposed to do. To like, my dad wants to know that I'm
Secure.
secure. I was like, this is pointless. And so I ended up quitting my job and just taking a really big chance on this is going to mean nothing to most of your podcast
That's all
listeners.
right.
If they ever hear this, by the way, because I still think you're not going to use this podcast. I went to this like theater festival in the Berkshires and it ended up changing my life. That got me a really good gig and that gig got me more good gigs. Jobs beget jobs. And I ended up having a pretty successful for me theater career after that. Yeah, it's really just big events like that help me at least to put things into perspective, just sort of look at the context of my life and say like, what actually is important, what's working, what's not. And short of a major life event like that, we'll go mushroom hunting, so to speak, to get a little more perspective sometimes. I call it a little reset,
Okay.
but not chanterelles.
Okay, nice. I've spoken to a bunch of people who do a lot of all kinds of different mushrooms, but so that's interesting. When did that start?
The mushroom thing?
Yeah, so you're talking about taking magic mushrooms as in
Yeah.
resetting your brain or whatever kind of medicinal mushroom approach.
Yeah, every once in a blue moon. Just sort of rewire.
Is that like a heroic dose kind of approach that you take, which is like a larger amount, or do you just
It's not, I actually am, I take like the standard,
Mhm.
tripping dose, like enough to get you going. I don't think it's like the thing that you do where you like sit with a therapist and like puke your guts out, but
Yeah.
enough to help me sort of like rewire my brain a little bit. I do it just, yeah, every once in a blue moon. I also think that mushrooms have changed my perspective on death as well. Going back to that sort of mortality, it really made me more comfortable with the thought of my own mortality. Of course, I haven't been faced with anything that, ask me when I get diagnosed with a terminal disease, right?
Yeah,
If things
yeah.
change. But as of right now, death isn't something that I greatly fear. It's one of those things where I always have this idea. My wife always tells me this, she thinks it's like super, I don't know what the word she uses is, morbid, I guess. And sort of, she thinks it's negative, but I always say like the, my ideal situation is to, when I die, just be forgotten immediately. I don't know. There's something very comforting about that. I don't know why.
It's interesting. Do you think that that's a product of your own experiences, like because of your experience with your father?
I guess so. I think it has to be, at least to a certain extent, because I think probably like the pain that I know death causes people who survive, those who die, is, in my opinion, probably greatly outweighed by what the actual experience of death is for a person who dies. And of course, I have no idea. Nobody has any idea. But I do know for a fact that it causes pain in
Yeah.
the world. And so, yeah, this is an odd tangent we've taken.
No, it's good. You- um, I'm just curious. Is there a like noise where you are, or is it where I am? So I want to ask you a bit more about bows, if you still have time to chat a bit more.
Dude, let's talk about bows. Let's talk about all of it. I feel like we've talked about everything but bows and hunting. Uh,
Yeah, I think we got a bit of hunting in there,
and a little bit of hunting. Yeah.
but I mean, ultimately, you'll probably find a lot of these podcasts have a lens of nature and maybe hunting or foraging, but it's about life. It's about people's experiences and how
Sure.
that's the thing that's always perpetually fascinated me is people are just fascinating, right? Everyone's got their story and everyone's got their experiences. Yeah, I think you'll struggle to find a human who is not got an interesting story in some capacity. That's for sure.
That is very true.
You got into making bows and you said you kind of skirted over it a little bit, but the thing that also interested me when I saw your bows on display down in LA Woodshop was that a lot of people that make their own bows, I'm generalizing now, a lot of people in the circles that I see on social media, I should probably start with, they make more, I think maybe it's called a self bow. They will take like a limb of a tree, or they'll just have like a piece of wood that they will then,
A stave of wood,
a
right?
stave. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you for the technical term. They'll then hone that down to the right shape and the right power, the
Yeah.
right strength, the right weight. But your bows seem to be way more complicated than that. They're multifaceted, many pieces, or I'm going to use terrible language here. Maybe you can talk through what you do, because I'm going to murder the technical language.
Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of, I mean, I've done pretty much every kind of bow
Okay.
at this point, but I immediately, as I started doing it, I wanted to get into more and more technical and efficient bows.
Hmm.
So I landed on recurve bows. I'm never going to make a compound bow, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
That's like a whole different thing. So yes, so a self bow is, like you said, you make it out of one solid piece. I think a lot of people do that because it's a lot more accessible. The way I put it, and I think this is one of the better ways to describe the difference between a pressed laminated bow, which is what I usually make recurves, and a self bow, is that they're both cooking, but the self bow is like making a stew. You put in a base, you put in whatever, you add a little of this, you taste it, you add a little of that, you taste it, and you just keep going until it's where you want it to be. A laminated bow, in the way that I make them, is more like baking, where you can't taste it until it comes out of the oven. And then once it comes out of the oven, that's it. It is what it is. So I make fiberglass backed recurve bows, and I use wood. I use wood for the riser, and I use wood for the limbs, and I often use buffalo horn for the limb tips. But it's sort of like it's the handle with like each limb has two layers of wood that are tapered to a very exact dimension, and they're tapered 2/1000ths of an inch for every inch of length. And I do that with a like a big drum sander and a aluminum jig, I guess, that I had made. And so I have a spreadsheet of all of the bows that I've made. And because the draw weight of the bow when it comes out is more or less set.
Yes.
For all practical purposes. And so I have a spreadsheet of the exact thickness and taper of all the bows that I made and the weight that they've come out at, so that when I make a bow, even when I'm changing different types of wood, I can take my best guess at what I need to get in terms of thickness of the limbs in order to get the draw weight that I want. And because there's two very thin layers of fiberglass that are on the belly and the back of the bow, I can't shave it down after the fact. After I've glued it up and put it in the form, there's no changing it other than the profile of the limb itself, which doesn't actually change the draw weight that much. This is an interesting bit of information. I actually teach bow making at my wood shop. It's not a recurve bow, but it is a laminated long bow. So it's somewhat similar. It's kind of a combination of the two different styles of bow making. But if you double the width of a bow limb, it will double the draw weight that it pulls. If you double the thickness of the bow limb, it will raise the draw weight 8 times. So the thickness is way, way more important than the width and the profile of the limb, because there's only so much you can do to shape the limb profile anyway. So yeah, that's sort of the way I like to make bows. These days I mostly make recurves, fiberglass backed recurves of various woods, and I take commissions, and my goal this year is to make more bows on spec and just sell them. But I don't make a whole lot. I'm not like churning them out like some of the bow makers out there who are just like selling bows left and right. And there's some really good custom bow makers out there that are doing that. Part of the reason is that, I started this wood shop in 2020, and it's for the first 5 years, it took up all of my time. So running the wood shop and teaching the classes. So I haven't had a whole lot of time to make things anymore. I always say when my students are like, what do you make? And I always go, I used to make things. But I am going to hopefully this coming year get back more into that. But yeah, that's the style of bow that I make. That's the kind of bow that I like to make. They're also way more durable when you make them with fiberglass, and the fiberglass ends up doing some of the work that the machine does, that the bow does. Okay. Fiberglass is a very resilient material, and other than it coming delaminated, usually if that ever happens, it's due to extreme heat, like someone leaving a bow in a car on a hot day. It really is durable. You can really abuse the hell out of it. You can leave it. This is also, I abuse the hell out of the bows that I make for myself just to sort of stress test them to see what I can get away with. Yeah. My hunting bow has not been unstrung for 4 years, and it has not lost a bit of its draw weight.
Wow.
I wanted to test that old like sort of dogmatic thing. I would never do that with a wooden bow, like an all wooden bow without fiberglass. That'll kill it. I've seen that firsthand. It'll just become like the flimsiest little noodle that you've ever had.
So have you had any like strange requests to make a bow, or any kind of like high power bows, or like is anything spring to mind? If you're making custom bows for people, you must have some weird requests. I've
gotten a lot of people that have requested the Legolas bow. And I always tell people, like, if you really wanted the Legolas bow, it would cost you so much money because it would just take me so much time to make.
What does it
I
look
do.
like? I forget.
It's impossible to describe. It's like an elven, very ornate. It's got all these like
I'm going to look it up
I
now.
almost want to say chevrons on it. It's got stuff on the handle that comes out. I have made bows that on the riser section have had like fun little like horn things that stick out of them and whatnot. I had a guy ask me to make, I think, 150-pound self bow
Okay.
once. He wanted it for like Ren Fair stuff.
Okay.
It was one of those situations. I always, have email conversations with people when they're asking me to make something because I want to make sure they know what they're asking for. And that was one of those moments. I was like,
Yeah.
do you know what like a 150-pound bow is going to feel like? He's like, oh yeah, I've shot some heavy bows. And I was like, how are your shoulders? Are they,
Are they
do you
well
like do
attached?
you like your shoulders? Do you like to be able to use them? But that was a commission that I turned down because I was just like, in order to get something working like that, the heavier the draw weight of bow you make, the more chance you have of breaking it. Um, and this is another thing I tell my students, that with all wooden bows, self bows and all wooden laminated bows, part of making bows is breaking bows. That's just what it is. Like anyone who's made enough bows in their life knows that it's just like you're going to break a bunch of them in the process. And sometimes it's your fault, but oftentimes it's just that particular piece of wood didn't want to be a bow. It didn't want to be stressed as much
Yeah. Yeah.
as it was. And there's just some little defect in it that cracks. And we get a lot of breaks in my bow class. There's usually at least one person who has a bow break. And I always like to like bring people in and sort of analyze how it broke and what probably caused it. And again, it's usually not the bowyer's fault. It's just
Is what
like
it
it
is.
just had like the backing just had like a weak spot. And if the backing goes away, then the belly is going to go away.
I'm curious.
I've totally,
Yeah, go
no,
on.
go ahead.
I was just asking you about that, about the bows. You also make some really intricate looking arrows and like amazing also paintwork on them and everything. Like the attention to detail is incredible.
Yeah, the cresting on the arrows.
Right. I'm curious with like, I mean, obviously for people who are in archery, they know about the spine of an arrow and how flexible it is and that being
Mm-hmm.
important. Like you mentioned before, it's really important that they match the bow and the draw length of the person who's shooting it.
Mm-hmm.
Are there limitations? There must be with a wooden arrow, how stiff you can make that for a more powerful bow. I'm curious. Is that an issue?
Yeah, to a certain extent, but you have to get it's a lot of it has to do with the acceleration of the arrow, sometimes more so than the power of the bow. And when you get into things like compound bows, I had a few people reach out to me about making arrows for I don't sell arrows anymore, but I had a few people back in the day when I did reach out to me about compound bows, and I usually turn them down unless they had a relatively low draw weight because the acceleration, that's such an
Yes.
efficient machine. The acceleration of that arrow coming out of the bow is so intense that it's really hard to predict what wood's going to do. And if you want to go up in spine, you can go up in thickness, but you can also like I don't know if you've ever shot wooden arrows, but there's a spine tester that you can use. Like I, for very short-lived time, made my own dowels, and you'd get a piece of straight grained, like cedar, like Port Orford cedar, and cut little pieces out of it, dowel them. Then you'd have to straighten them, and you would check the spine, and then you'd sort them. It's a fucking nightmare of a process, which is why I don't do it anymore. I just buy my dowels pre-made. But if you can't get what you're looking for out of that, if you really want to go up, you can go up in species.
Ah,
So like Port Orford cedar is a really great arrow wood because it's strong. You can get it pretty straight grain. And if you bend it, like if you accidentally like hit something and the arrow bends, you can bend it back. It has like a memory to it. It's really great. But You can also use something like maple or ash or hickory that is going to be much stronger, but doesn't bend as easily. And you have to heat treat it in order to get it to straighten it and to bend it back to straight.
Okay.
But yes, there are limitations. And I've heard of people shooting wooden arrows out of compounds. I wouldn't recommend it. I would imagine that's a recipe for just getting a piece of wood in your hand.
That sounds scary.
Yeah. But yeah, short answer, yes, there are limitations to wood. I love shooting wooden arrows. I still shoot them. I know that I could probably shoot better with carbons, but I just love the feeling of it. There really is a different feel to shooting a wooden arrow out of a wooden bow. There's like a simplicity to it. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
I haven't had the pleasure yet, but I hope to someday soon. I'm kind of taking baby steps towards that.
Come find me next time you're in LA.
Yeah, man. That'll be awesome.
There's so many good archery ranges out here, free archery ranges too.
Yeah, that was actually something I found pretty surprising. It was like right near where I was. It was like a 17-minute drive, and I could go shoot like a few times a week, just go fling a few arrows, and there's a whole community of people there. It was actually, yeah, it was nice to see.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about the bows that you make that I was curious about was about efficiency in terms of like, I mean, I know it completely depends on the bow, the person, the draw length, the weight, all those things. Mm-hmm. When you create like, I mean, compared to a self bow, are they generally more efficient? Do they shoot like a faster speed? What kind of speeds do you get like in general? I mean, I know it completely varies, but.
You know what? I have literally only chronographed an arrow out of one of my bows once. The speed of the arrow is not something I'm super concerned with.
Yeah, of course.
Or have ever been. Like I get like when you get into the compound world, like where that comes in. I don't even remember what speed I got. It was because I bought a chronograph for my PRS rifle. And I was like, I hear you can shoot arrows out of this, so I just want to test it. And I almost ruined my chronograph. But yeah, I shot it just for shits and giggles. I don't know what kind of speeds I'm getting, but yeah. So generally speaking, for the draw weight that you're pulling, a fiberglass bow, whether it's a long bow or a recurve, is going to be more efficient than a self bow, because that fiberglass for its weight is able to do more work. It's able to store more energy and efficiently release it than wood is. So without going too far into the weeds, like think about if I had like a broomstick, right? And on the end of that broomstick, I put a bowling ball. And I swing that broomstick. It's going to go pretty slowly, right? But if I take the bowling ball off, I can swing it really fast. So that's the effect of weight on your bow limbs, especially the tip of your bow limbs. And so that fiberglass is, like I said, for its weight, doing a bunch of work. So it's naturally more efficient. But then you get into the world where, because of the shape of it, recurves are also generally going to be more efficient than longbows. And I still do love shooting longbows. I find them way more forgiving than recurve bows. But if you think about, again, without going too much into the weeds of it, the shape of the recurve bow, the limbs recurving, the reflex going back forward, that shape it's not the same, but it performs a very similar action to the cams on a compound bow. Where it drives that arrow at a certain point in the arrow's release, it drives that arrow very fast. Yes. It really like drives home at the end really intensely.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. It's like an extra accelerating force.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I think, Eric, it's probably about time to wrap up our chat, but I guess
we haven't even talked about spearfishing.
Man, that's a whole point.
That's a whole other thing. I could talk about that for a billion years.
Well, I mean, if you have time, I have time.
I mean, I don't have a whole lot to say. I'm relatively new. I've been doing it for a couple of years. A friend of mine got me into it, and it's one of my new favorite things. I love diving under the waters in like Palos Verdes just next to LA and watching the wildlife and occasionally seeing a fish that I want to eat and shooting it. It's glorious. It's also the instant gratification version of hunting.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
not months and months of scouting and then maybe coming home with something. It's like, if you get in the water and you really want to fish, you will come home with a fish. You will come home with 7 fish if you want. It's also funny, the night that, I don't know if I told you this, I'm sure someone told you at the party, but the night that you went to the party and saw my work and I wasn't there, it was because it was opening night of lobster season. And so we were diving in the water at night and pulling up lobsters.
Nice. So you're just free diving and going down.
Yeah.
How deep are you
Yeah.
going down? Like, I guess, are they in the shallows or do you have to go?
The lobsters?
Yeah.
Not deep at all. When we're going lobsters, like I want to say, like the deepest we generally go is like 20 feet.
Yeah, man.
They're like at night, you often find them like if you come upon like a rock on the surface with some kelp on it, they're just like right there. They're just wandering around, just being like, eat me.
And so you have like a headlamp or something on as you go
Yeah,
down?
I've got a flashlight in my hand.
Ah,
Because they're sensitive to the light. So once you spot one, you actually immediately pull the light off of it. You dive down and you sort of use as much peripheral light as you can to see the lobster, and you grab it like that.
nice. That sounds like
Well, you
so
should try
much
it.
fun. That sounds like
Because
a
you
lot of
just got
fun.
into spearfishing, right?
Yeah, I just got into it. I only been a couple of times, but already I can see it's so much like bow hunting, just in the way that you approach, the energy that you have, like not giving too much attention. Yeah, it just feels like an extension of that. Yeah, it's cool. I've got to say I'm hooked already, which is slightly scary.
Oh, agreed. Same with me. Like it's like as if I needed to spend more time doing things that weren't necessary things.
Yeah,
But I do have a freezer full of lobster and fish now, which is great.
that's perfect, man. That's exactly what you want. Have you thought about making a spear gun then? I mean, if you're making
yeah.
bows, seems like a natural progression.
It's on my list. Everyone keeps asking me that. Yeah,
Are they-
I'm gonna go down that once I take care of a lot of the stuff that I need to at the top of the year. I think I'm gonna delve into that, and make one for myself.
Yeah, not long,
I'm
and
really excited.
you'll be doing a course for it,
Oh God,
which you can definitely.
another really niche course at the woodworking school that like 2 people in the LA area will be like, yeah, I could try that out.
Yeah, perfect, man. That's why you've got a whole city of people. There's bound to be someone who's interested in it.
Absolutely.
Eric, it was awesome talking to you today. It was good to. I mean, we
Yeah.
had a chit chat before, but it was lovely to hear your stories in more depth and hear everything. Loads of things I wanted to ask you about. There was
Next
one
time.
thing I wanted to ask you. Say people are listening and they're thinking after this conversation, I think I want to try and make a bow. Any last thoughts or suggestions that for them, like how to go ahead with it, or things they can do, whether it's mindset or resources?
My biggest advice is do it. It's awesome. I wish more people would do it. I wish more people would shoot archery. I think it's important for the mind and soul. Resources, get yourself a stave of wood. I'd say make a self bow first and foremost. Resources, get the first volume of the traditional Bowyer's Bible. Invaluable resource. There's so much there's 4 volumes and there's so much information packed into there. But all you need is I made my first self bow with a clamp. 2 clamps are better than 1. You only need like a small work surface, a clamp, and a farrier's rasp and some sandpaper. You can do all of your work with those 3 things.
Okay,
You
it's a
can
farrier's
get
rasp.
more-
It's like one of those things you hold with 2 hands and you rub it against and it like takes away
It's
material.
like a really long wood rasp, and you can put a handle on it. I mean, you can hold it with 2 hands, but it works on the push stroke.
Okay.
And you can there's 2 sides to it. There's a fine side. It's meant for like horseshoeing, I guess. There's a fine side and a rough side, a coarse side. And you can hog off tons of material and shape the bow exactly the way you want it with that tool alone. And then you take out all the teeth marks with sandpaper. There are other tools you can get that will make your life easier, but that's all you need. You really need almost nothing. You need very little to try it. Just read up on it first. I think there are good YouTube videos at this point out
Yeah,
there. I'm
must be.
sure there must be.
Must be.
So I'm sure there are great resources there, but I can't speak to any of them.
Okay, awesome. Is there anywhere you want people to go? How can they? I know you said you're not much on social media, but is there a website that people can go to if they want to do your course or if they want to follow you on socials?
So I'm Brooklyn Bowyer on Instagram. I don't post much, but if you're interested, you can see some examples of my work. I make very simple recurve bows. I try not to do like a bunch of fancy laminations and stuff because I think they're annoying. But yeah, Brooklyn Bowyer on Instagram. My woodworking school is LA Woodshop. Pretty easy to remember. So if you're in the Southern California area, I do a bow making class like twice a year. Usually we have one coming up in November.
Okay.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. I have a website, but I don't really advertise my bows ever. It's just sort of like word of mouth usually. So I weirdly took down my website to redo it, and I never really put it back up. If you go to it, it just says coming soon. And there's like a couple of pictures of bows on there. And like, if you really want to reach out to me, email me.
Okay.
Very bad at marketing.
Well, I'll put links to everything down in the show notes so people can check it out.
Yeah.
Eric,
thanks, dude.
awesome.
It was
Thank
lovely
you for your
chatting
time.
with you.
Yeah, lovely chatting
I
to you too.
apologize for all of the tangents.
No, man, the tangents are what it's all about. Hopefully at some point I'll be back down in LA and I can maybe we can connect. I'd love to come and learn some things.
Definitely hit me up. We'll go shooting and we'll go spearfishing.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, thanks, chap. Okay, folks, that's another episode done and dusted. A huge thank you again to Eric for sharing all your time and stories and knowledge about bow building. I'm excited. I've been toying with the idea of building a bow for a long time now, but now I'm getting more into the recurve world. This is getting even more appealing. So I know at some point I'm going to be heading down to LA to hopefully get some direct instruction. But otherwise, I do have a few staves of wood that I might have a play around with before. So we'll see how that goes. Definitely head over to Instagram, check out Brooklyn Bowyer. That way you can find out more information about bow building. Eric has a class too, so if you're curious about that, check out the show notes. There'll be links. You can find out how to do that if you're near LA or want to fancy making a trip over there. Once again, thank you to everyone for listening. If you're still here, I'm going to take that as a win. Again, give us a follow so that you're always up to date with the latest episodes. And also, yeah, give us a 5-star review. You could even write a little something. I do like it when a message comes through. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch.